Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily. I'm your host, Ray Flowers. Thanks for joining me on this Monday. Typing, getting things done. Let me make sure my head is on the screen. There we go. Looking a little big today. And there we go. If I get excited, my top of my head will go off the screen. Who knows? Let's have fun today. I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Thanks for joining me. As always, here on the show Monday through Friday. Fantasy Sports Daily is rocking and rolling. Let's change this saturation here a little bit. I look red. Let's go a little bit. There we go. That's more Ray. No, that's about where Ray. That's Ray color right there. Let's go with that. Monday through Friday, Fantasy Sports Daily is live. You can always catch the show on demand. Type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network. You can always go to FantasyGuru.com, click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page, find the show. You can watch us live or on tape delay, demand, whatever you want to call it. Fantasy Guru site on Twitter X. FantasyGuru.com/fantasy. It's FantasyGuru.com. Let me get all my comms together here. I got a lot of things going on in my head this morning, and I'll explain why in a second. How about Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ and YouTube.com/Elite Plus Network. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter X. You can watch live, leave comments and questions that we'll address throughout the show. A big week coming up here this week. Before we get to that, let's look at kind of what the schedule is for the day here. Busy week. I'll explain all the week. I know I hinted at it last week. I'll give a rundown of what's going on this week so you're all aware of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the draft book that was released on Friday. We'll talk a little bit about the Breakout Pitcher of the Year article that was released on the weekend. It's ADP week over at FantasyGuru.com, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then a bunch of players in the news. Most recently, Manaea this morning. Not good news there. Updates on the health of players, but also updates on trades, updates on spots in the batting order. A bunch of guys to talk about. Alex Bregman, Austin Riley, Nolan, Arenado, Pete Armstrong, Heliot, Ramos, CJ Abrams, on and on and on. We'll have a long discussion today. No football day, all baseball today here on the show. And that leads into kind of what we're doing this week. And it's a baseball week, so let's throw it up on the screen. Ray Flowers' itinerary for the week that everyone, of course, has to have handy because it's super important. This is kind of what we got going on this week. Obviously, we're doing the show right now, Fantasy Sports Daily. Later, or actually today as well, it's already available at FantasyGuru.com. ADP bargains in the infield. So we'll have the infield article will come out today. I mistyped here. I wrote on the screen tomorrow is also infield. Obviously, we're not doubling up on infield. Tuesday will be outfield. ADP for pitchers, that comes in on Saturday. As you can see here, there's a lot going on, so let's go day by day. Fantasy Sports Daily, here's what you need to know. I'm on today. I am not on tomorrow. There will be no Fantasy Sports Daily tomorrow. The reason being my Tout Wars defense of my championship from last year will begin tomorrow. We'll have the draft tomorrow morning, starting at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard, 8 o'clock Pacific time, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I got the time wrong there too. Geez, I was all screwed up this morning. It's 11 a.m. East Coast time, 8 o'clock Pacific time. There's too many things that I have to do while drafting and too many things for this show to make it work. I was going to jump in and say, hey, we're in the 5th round here. How's it going? And just talk for an hour through the draft. Unfortunately, there's just too much, creating the show and posting the show and hosting the show. I wish I could, but really it's just not feasible. So there will be no show tomorrow. So we're here today. We're not here tomorrow. Wednesday, Justin Fensterman will be hosting. I'll be back here Thursday and Friday. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Fantasy Sports Daily will be live. No show on Tuesday, but the other 4 days this week, we will be here. As you can see here on Tuesday, I not only have the Tout Wars draft in the morning, I then have the Labor Mix draft at night. That draft is being covered on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think it's on for 3 hours. So I think it's 8 to 11 Eastern Time. So I will be in that draft. I will be, I think, drafting 8 out of the 15 teams in the Mixed League. I will be hosting that draft with Kyle Elfrink. Yay, Kyle. Kyle and I back again. We're doing that. Steve Phillips will join us. Jeff Power, too. So there'll be a 3-person booth at all times, but I think Jeff's going to come in for the last hour. Steve can only work the first 2. But I'll be drafting in that Labor Mixed draft, and I'll be hosting it. So that'll be 8 to 11 Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday night at SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. On Wednesday, because Jeff Mans is gone this week, he's on vacation. On Wednesday, I'm on Elite Sports. Monday and Tuesday, Elite Sports, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Monday through Tuesday, Justin Festerman will be hosting. I will be hosting on Wednesday. There will be no show on Thursday because there's an FSGA draft. They're putting in that time slot on Thursday. I will be back to be hosting on Friday. So this show, Fantasy Sports Daily, is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. On Elite Sports, the Elite Sports Show is 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, so the schedule's a little bit different. Jeff's just taking a week off. He'll be back next week, so we're changing things up a little bit around there. As you can see on Wednesday, I'll have my Tout Wars review. I'll write that up. It'll be available over at the site. Thursday, there'll be the labor review over at this website. On Friday, I'll be here and on Sirius doing double duty. That'll be a fun day. Lots of talking that day. Saturday and Sunday, also talking for SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. So for those of you that are in only leagues, NL only, AL only leagues, we got you covered on the weekend. Both days, Saturday and Sunday, it's 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm hosting the show solo. We'll have some guests in, people that participated in the draft. We'll talk over the AL labor auction and the NL labor auction. Excuse me. So both those leagues will be discussed. We'll break it down. We'll talk values. We'll talk how teams were put together, how money was spent, all that kind of stuff. So there's the schedule for the week. Again, Fantasy Sports Daily is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Elite Sports on SiriusXM is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Sorry for the inconvenience. I thought since it's all over the place, it would make sense to put it up there on the screen. So there's the schedule for the week. And lots of baseball, too. Saying it, I'm hosting Jeff's show twice. We'll talk probably 2 hours of baseball on all those shows, on those two shows, with an hour of football talk. But I'm also hosting 3 drafts this week. Mixed League, AL only, and only. Let's have some fun on the show this week. Okay, let's go back to the regularly scheduled program. Let's minimize that a little bit. Let's make my face bigger because who doesn't want to see that? Let's talk about the draft book and the breakout pitcher of the year for a second. The draft book is available over at fantasyguru.com. For those people that don't know what that is, we talked about it last week on the show on Friday, episode 342. If you want to listen to that, it's posted on the website. I actually linked on the website. If you go to the fantasyguru.com and you go to the draft book section, you actually see that video from the show on Friday there. I'll listen to my critique and my issues with the draft book, so you can listen for 15 minutes about what I think about it. But it's available. I will say that, so everyone's aware, I don't know if I directly said that. I mean, I said it, but I don't know if I directly said it last week. The draft book is updated once a week, and the plan is updated every Friday. The rankings are updated every day if they need to be. So like Sean Manaea, who we'll talk about here in a bit, it looks like he's going to miss the start of the season. I've already dropped him in the rankings. I did that this morning. Okay. So I can adjust the rankings on a daily basis. I'm not adjusting the draft book on a daily basis. And again, as we talked about last week, has to be done by hand. It's just onerous. It's impossible to update on a daily basis. It'd be all I do. It'd take me 4 hours a day. It's just not feasible. So if you really are, if you're drafting on a Thursday, if you're drafting on a Tuesday, Wednesday, if there's been injury, use the rankings. That's another reason to use the rankings versus the actual draft book. But the draft book is available, updated every Friday. I already went in this weekend on Sunday, actually yesterday, and moved some things around based upon the rankings and all that. So it will be updated this Friday. That's the plan, at least, for the draft book. The breakout pitcher of the year. John G says, Ray, I read the breakout pitcher article. Is there one person that you left off that you feel could have a Seth Lugo type of year? We talked about him a lot last year. Someone you wish you had on it. Yeah, I did write a player profile of Seth Lugo that was available in the preseason. I said, look, for no cost, add this guy. Cool. If you can't get him, that's fine. But I'm not overly excited. I didn't predict Seth Lugo having a breakout season, but I thought, hey, it's a nice value play. So I did do a full player profile on him. John says there's one person you left off the list that you could have a Seth Lugo type of year. There's 17 players on the list, John. There's a lot of players on the list. There are 2 players. I don't know if you saw them in there. They're honorable mention. Those would probably be 2 guys. I just didn't write them up, but they're right on the fringe. So check that out. Look for the honorable mention. There's 2 guys there that I can't name them. And the reason I'm being coy here is because the breakout pitcher of the year, which I've had some success with over the years. And it's not like a lot of people will say, oh, this guy, pitcher 19 is going to be pitcher 3 this year. Okay, who cares? I say pitcher 58 is going to be pitcher 20 this year, or pitcher 58 is going to be pitcher 14 this year. That's what I try to do. And I had some success. As we talked about last year, it was Brian Woo. Didn't have the breakout season because he was limited to 22 outings, but dynamite strikeout to walk ratio, fantabulistic ERA, stupendous whip. He was terrific. He just didn't pitch enough innings to really be a breakout pitcher. Also had Bryce Miller and Hunter Brown as my 2 and 3. So if you drafted those 3 guys last year, you were great. So to answer your question, John, look for the 2 guys in the article that were honorable mention. I think they're probably right down the alley of what you're asking about here. The breakout pitcher of the year is available over fantasyguru.com. It went up yesterday. It's normally the player profiles are like 1,300 words, 1,400 words, something like that. This one's like 5,500 because it's much more in depth. I go through, again, there's 17 pitchers, and we whittle it down to the number 1 guy. And there's graphs, there's charts, there's all kinds of stuff in there. So I would encourage people, obviously, to read it if you've got your membership at fantasyguru.com. If you don't, you're missing out. And by the way, John and everybody else, I think we're all aware of this. This has been an issue over the years. It's fine if you want to go out and put it on social media or whatever. I don't know why you would do that, because you're paying for the advantage over your competition. So the point being that, let's try to keep the breakout pitcher of the year, who it is, under wraps till the season starts. We don't want to have the secret get out and have people that aren't subscribers to fantasyguru.com to get it. So there you go. There's a little tease. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Hey, get fantasyguru.com's breakout article for pitcher of the year. Okay, let's get into some of the news of the day. And some of the news of the day starts out with Austin Riley in batting order. Austin Riley didn't do anything the other day, and it's really hard to take too much away from batting orders early in spring, because teams are trying things out, and maybe someone's a little under the weather, or they got a little bit of a muscle tweak, or they want to get a young guy. So, so it's kind of that thing. But we obviously want to know where batting orders are set. And there are some teams where the batting orders are pretty obvious, right? We'll talk about C.J. Abrams in a bit. He's going to be the leadoff guy. Okay. With the Braves, especially with, Acuna out at the start of the season, right? It's like, well, how are they going to do this? Jurickson Profar had a really strong season last year. Ozzie Albies is consistently hit at the top of the order. They've got Riley and Olsen and Marcell Ozuna, who in theory are 3, 4, and 5, right? Well, if we got Albies, Profar, Michael Harris, who are the 2 guys that go up front? Who's the guy that drops down to 6th, right? That's a big change. Well, Austin Riley was the number 2 hitter on Sunday. We'll have to continue to watch this. This is, Harris was hitting 5th on the weekend. Maybe they try to do lefty-righty stuff and mix it up, right? Profar and Albies weren't in the game. So bottom line is with the Braves, we're not sure how the order is going to play itself out. If I had to guess to start the year, and I'm guessing, completely guessing, Harris, Albies, Riley, Olsen, Ozuna, total guess. And again, it's not, all those guys, that's fine. But who's hitting 6th? If they want to put Profar 1 or 2, now Harris is hitting 6th. Or Ozzie Albies is hitting 6th. So that is a storyline they'll have to watch, of course. Obviously, Harris spent a lot of time in the bottom third of the order when he started his big league career. He's having these strong seasons for a couple of years, but just wasn't he was in the bottom third of the order. Let's hope that time has passed. Yeah, we'll see how the Braves play things out. Alex Bregman went 3 for 3 with a double on Sunday in his debut for the Red Sox. Just to hit on this topic one more time, because we're just talking about a third baseman and Riley. I am tired of talking about Alex Bregman, who for years has been somebody I like. If you're long time been someone I've liked, I'm tired of talking about him. But just to throw it out there one more time, he's playing third base. He played third base in the game. He's playing third base in practice. The Red Sox are saying still that the shoulder issue with Devers are not 100% certain he's all the way back. So they're having Devers, DH and do this. Okay, we'll see. Again, this is a big deal. Is Bregman going to play second? Is he going to play third? Is Devers going to be pissed off if they say you got to play first base or DH? Do they trade Tristan Casas to change? So there's a lot of things in play here. But for now, Alex Bregman's playing third base. They are saying it's because Devers is not able to play third at this moment in time. There is still a month of calendar to get ready to the start of the regular season. So Devers could be the starting third baseman, no question about it. But another one of those storylines to keep in the back of your mind. John G also says, if you don't have a subscription to play fantasy baseball, you're doing yourself a disservice. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think we got a pretty good crew over at FG. We got a good group of people. We got a pretty good product. Obviously, right now we're focusing on the seasonal baseball component of that, but we'll have the wagering piece, we'll have the DFS piece. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently, and I assume at some point talk about that here on the show. We're gonna I think, improve things this year. So that'll be interesting too. Kind of streamline things a little bit. So we'll talk about that as we get a little closer to opening day. But thank you for the kind words, Sean. I appreciate it. All right. Speaking of third baseman, we just talked about two of them. Let's talk about a third one. Nolan Arenado. There was a really good article over at The Athletic talking about Nolan Arenado. And the bottom line is Arenado and the team had an agreement that there are 5 squads he wanted to be traded to. And it was like the Dodgers and the Padres. And it's like the Dodgers don't need a third baseman. The Padres don't need a third baseman. His 5 teams on his list, there was only one that really made sense, and it was the Houston Astros. And the Astros, I don't remember. Were the Astros on his list? Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. I read the article last week. I could be remembering that wrong. But the bottom line is the Astros and the Cardinals had a deal in place, right? Because the Astros were reading the writing on the wall. We're not going to get Alex Bregman. He's not coming back. We need a third baseman. Let's make this deal out. They, in essence, agreed to a trade. And they agreed to the money involved and all this kind of stuff. And then it was presented to Alex Bregman. And to Nolan Arenado. And Nolan Arenado said, well, let me think about this. Because he wanted to know what direction the Astros were going. And the Astros had just traded Kyle Tucker, right? They're now re-signing Alex Bregman. So now Arenado, who basically just wants to play on a team that has a chance to win, was looking at the Astros as a team that, are they trying to win this year? Because that's the Cardinals thing, right? The Cardinals are tearing it down and just trying to be competitive while the young guys ascend. The Astros are without Bregman and Kyle Tucker. That's a much less attractive scenario. So Arenado eventually said, I'm not going to agree to the trade. I'm not against it long term. Like, I'm not saying no forever, but right now I'm not agreeing, and I want to see what they do. Well, the Astros then said, all right, we're going to go sign Christian Walker because we're not going to wait around on Arenado and who knows. So they went out and signed Christian Walker to play a corner infield spot, right, with the money that they were going to pay Arenado. So now Arenado, he doesn't have a fit with the Astros. So the bottom line is they just ran out of time and teams, and there was no fit. There was a report that came out the last 48 hours saying that, well, maybe their teams are talking again. And Chandler Rome and Katie Wu, one reporter for each team, basically said there's no truth to the rumors that they're talking right now. So it really 100%, well, not 100%, 98% certainty right now that Nolan Arenado is going to be that starting third baseman for the Cardinals, and then we will see. We'll see if they trade him. We'll see what comes down. It'll probably come down to how effective is Arenado offensively, because he dealt with some issues with his back and was underperforming last year. So how effective is he? And of these teams, these other teams, who loses a third baseman, who loses a first baseman, who needs something early in the season, maybe they can work a deal out. But for now, Arenado's just gonna kind of do his thing with the Cardinals. That's just, we talked about this last week, and it's just, that's the way it's playing out. The Padres, the Astros also signed Isaac Paredes, right? So they can play Paredes at third base. They got Walker at first base. They're just not a fit there anymore. So, that's Arenado's right as a guy that's been around for a decade to say I only want to be traded to these teams. That's part of the collective bargaining agreement. That's fine. But it's going to be a Cardinal. And he showed up at camp, and it sounded like he talked, and they had everyone's being professional and everything like that. So they're going to make it work. But Arenado's going to be the starting third baseman for the Cardinals, barring something really surprising at this point. Parker Meadows, one of the youngsters that has at times the last couple of years had brief moments of success and excitement. Player for the Tigers that, if everything came together, could go 2020, maybe even 2030. Like, he's got legitimate fantasy talent. Well, he's got a biceps injury right now. And again, it's a month to opening day, and a lot of guys are going to have tweaks and injuries and issues. And though it is surprising, is it not, that these guys that get paid millions of dollars come to camp and they're hurt of 5 days into camp. It happens all the time. We're seeing oblique injuries all the time. And again, these things happen, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players. Okay. But why are you pulling muscles a week into camp? Like, are you not training in the off season? Anyway, Parker Meadows got a bicep injury. We don't know what that means at the moment. They're going to have an official report on Tuesday. That's according to manager AJ Hinch. So we'll know tomorrow what's going on with Parker Meadows. So if you have a draft tonight, or you're drafting tomorrow like I am in Tout Wars, it's like, hopefully we'll get some information today on Parker Meadows. Maybe it's just a tweak and he'll miss a couple of days and no big deal. But he's expected to be the everyday starting center fielder for this team. And again, there's a lot of sneaky potential for him to be a 2020 kind of guy that we were talking about a year ago, and then it didn't quite come together, and then injuries, and then finally later in the year, the production. He's an intriguing player. And so we'll keep a close eye on that report tomorrow and hope that we get good news with these guys that are having a hard time making it through a week of camp. Pete Armstrong is not injured. We're going to call him PCA, or I'm at least going to write PCA, because I'm not going to write Pete Armstrong every time. That's just, come on. That's just too long. That's just craziness. But PCA is somebody who has a lot of intrigue in the fantasy space. He's got his hit tool is kind of unknown, uncertain, unexciting, unappealing, however you want to put it. He might only hit 240. There's strikeouts at times. He might hit 240. He might hit 220. But he's going to play great defense. He's got the power to hit 15 to 20 home runs. And he certainly has the ability to steal 25 or 30 bases. So he could be a 15 home run, 30 steal guy as early as this year. And the real question is, what's the batting average going to look like? And secondarily, where does he hit in the order? In theory, in the old days of baseball, PCA would have had, let's put him at leadoff, right? Or at worst case, second. It's different now. If we're going to hit 230 with a 306 on base percentage, we're going to hit you seventh. So he's almost certain to start the year in the bottom third of the order for the Cubs. And we'll see if he can move up. So while he could go 15-30 this year, hitting 230, the runs and RBIs may not be very impressive if he's hitting down in the Cubs order. So that's another one of these scenarios with PCA that, I'm not against drafting him at all. I'm not against getting a little aggressive with him at all. I think that's a very defensible position to take. He's a very exciting young player with that 5x5 skill set that we love. But spot in the batting order is a little bit uncertain for PCA. Heliot Ramos is going to miss a week with a mild oblique strain. At least that's the expectation right now. Here we go again. It's like, I'm not saying you're out of shape. These things happen. There's hundreds of players. There's a week. Heliot Ramos is not the first guy dealing with an oblique this spring. It's like, guys, come on, man. Come on. The season's over for the Giants. You take October off, take November off, take December off. January, you kill it. First half of month, March or February, you kill it. You got 6 weeks to ramp up here. You can't get yourself in shape in 6 weeks. You start pulling muscles a week into camp. Ramos obviously is a 25-year-old outfielder who emerged last season kind of out of nowhere. He'd almost become a forgotten guy with the Giants. They'd almost gotten to the point where they moved on. Kind of gave him one last chance, and boy, did he finally live up to expectations. He was really good. He doesn't profile as a 300 hitter, though. He doesn't profile as a 30 home run bat. He doesn't profile as a 20 steal guy. He profiles as, if everything goes right, to be in that Brian Reynolds zone, right? Which, again, we've talked about. If he's hitting 275 with 21 home runs and 82 RBIs and 79 runs scored, it's usable. So I think that right now there's no reason to be concerned with Heliot Ramos. There is a reason, obviously, to pay attention here. He's not overly expensive. What's his ADP? 250? Let's look him up. I'm using the NFBC's ADP. I always do. His ADP is 200, so a little bit better than I thought. He, fourth outfielder kind of thing. I think that's very fair to a guy that had a breakout season last year. Got to get healthy, of course, but right now doesn't seem like that's a big deal. So we'll just mention it and move on. CJ Abrams, before we talk a little bit of pitchers here on the show, CJ Abrams, he's a fascinating player, to me at least. CJ Abrams came up, and Abrams coming up through the minors, his hit tool, in opposition to Pete Armstrong. CJ Abrams, his hit tool's a 70 on the 2080 scale. Like, people looked at this guy and said, this guy's going to hit 300 at the big league level. And 280's hit 246, 245, 246, which is impossible to do. If we're being honest, it's impossible to be that consistent. And the unfortunate thing is it's not a very good number. Now, his walk rate has inched up each of the last 2 years. Unfortunately, his strikeout rate has inched up each of the last 2 years. So he's basically had an identical walk to strikeout ratio the last 2 seasons. On base percentage and the slugging percentage, very similar the last 2 years. And I think a lot of people, because they were expecting him to hit 300, have looked at CJ Abrams and been kind of like, that's a little disappointing. Let's not get crazy here, okay? In his first full season of 100 games in the major league level, he was 2 home runs and 3 steals away from going 20-50. I know we got Ellie De La Cruz. I know we got Shohei Ohtani, but 2050 is huge. Okay. Last season, he went 2030. So he is a player that over the last 2 years has gone 1940, and people are kind of disappointed. And that's how talented this guy is. Let's not forget that C.J. Abrams is 24 years old, that he has less than 400 games played at the big league level. If he hit 270 this year, I would not be surprised at all. And if he hit 270 this year, he's going to hit 23, 4 home runs. He's probably going to steal 35, 40 bases. Like, let's not sleep on him. Let's not look at C.J. Abrams and be like, oh, well, you know, if he just does what he's done the last 2 years and does it again, you're going to love having this guy on your team. Abrams' ADP is much higher than Ramos, of course. Abrams is coming in at 50, which I think last year was 20-ish. So it's way down from where it was last year. He's the same guy he was last year. And we got the good news that C.J. Abrams is going to be the leadoff hitter of the Nationals. So we'll get those extra plate appearances. And I haven't said this, I don't think, this year. Every spot in the batting order that you go down, you lose roughly 15 to 20 plate appearances over the course of the season. So leadoff guy becomes the number 2 hitter. Over the course of the entire season, the number 2 guy is going to have about 15 fewer plate appearances. The number 3 guy would have 30 fewer plate appearances than the leadoff guy. The number 4 guy would have 45 fewer plate appearances than the leadoff guy. This is another one of the reasons why teams have started hitting their best player instead of third, where it was traditionally, second. So like, let's get this guy up to the plate more, right? Not to mention having theoretically the higher the order you bat, the better chance you are of at least being driven in, because you're on base for theoretically the big boppers if the Nationals have those. So I think all in all, this is good news. It's a position where he wants to be. It's a position where he's comfortable, and it's a position that he's going to start at. Manager Dave Martinez, as he is our leadoff hitter. Let's talk some pitchers here on the show. And again, go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, and get signed up for the draft guide. It's a full season product, right? It's not just a preseason product. We call it a draft guide, but you get it. You get coverage throughout the entirety of the 2025 Major League Baseball season. You get access to Discord. You get access to any live streams or podcasts we do. You get access to every article we write. You get access to all of that over at fantasyguru.com. If you click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, go to the baseball section. You can get the baseball package for seasonal, the baseball package for betting, the baseball package for DFS. You can get 2 of the 3. You can get all 3 if you want to go for it, which I think you should. I'm biased, of course. FantasyGuru.com, top right corner, subscribe tab. Also, send a note to support@fantasyguru.com. Support@fantasyguru.com to get you any questions you might have answered. Like, Ray, I want to do this or that. Or, well, don't ask me because I don't answer it. Ted is basically the guy who usually asks it. Dear customer support person, I'd like to do A, B, and C. What do we do? We're pretty agreeable to trying to cater things to folks. If you want to add baseball and football, but you don't want to get the all-in package, the VIP Platinum. If you want to get all the sports besides baseball and football, get the MVP plan. That's basically everything else we do. That could still be on sale. It was 60% off last week. I don't know if it still is, but if you want to get NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, horse racing, soccer, all of that's the MVP plan. It was 60% off through last week. If you send a note to support@fantasyguru.com, might be able to continue that discount for you this week. Let them know that you heard it here and you'd like to get that discount. See what we can do. All right, Dustin May is somebody who's been on my dynasty team. I finally let Dustin May go because, like all of you, we all know how talented Dustin May is, but the guy, just simply put, can't stay on the field. Injury after injury after injury after injury, but it's so easy to dream on the talent, right? Because the talent is immense. Now, he goes out there over the weekend, had his debut against the Padres, gave up 1 hit and 2 scoreless innings of work. The velocity was there. He looked good. He had a 27 CSW, which is totally fine on his 15 pitches. We start to dream. Now, the problem with May is a problem we've talked about with the Dodgers virtually every time we've mentioned them, is that they have every pitcher in the world, it seems like, is on the Dodgers, right? Yamamoto's going to be a starter, Snell, Glasnow, and Sasaki. Those 4 guys are in the rotation. Then it's a matter of when's Clayton Kershaw going to be ready? When's Dustin May going to be ready? How does Tony Gonsolin look, right? Because he's, I think, theoretically their 5th guy right now. What about Bobby Miller, who took the ball off his head last week? Miller, we got good news that he's, I think, been cleared for baseball activity. Saw it right before things started here. So he's been cleared for baseball activity. So he's in the mix. So they've got all these guys that could start. And in the case of May, it's, there are no innings on his arm because of the continual injuries. Most likely, Dustin May will be a reliever for the Dodgers this year. I'm not going to preclude him from making a start here and there. Maybe he makes 5 to 10 starts. I think that if he threw 60 innings this year, they'd be really happy with that. And remember, they have all these guys that they're going to plan on making 20 starts out of. Jeff Mans has talked about on the Elite Sports Show a bunch. Like, they're not planning on their guys making 30 starts. They're planning on making 22 starts, right? So Dustin May is not somebody that you draft in a mixed league. Even if he looks great in camp, it's just, even if the wildest scenario plays out, and they open the season with him in the starting rotation, you still have Gonsolin there, you still have Miller there, you still have Clayton Kershaw coming. Like, there's just, and then you've got the health injury scenario with May to deal with. I'm rooting for the guy. I mean, who isn't at this point with all the stuff he's needed to overcome? But he's 27 years old. I mean, Dustin, let's put this up at a time. He's 27 years old. At one point in time, he was one of the top 5 or so right-handed pitching prospects in baseball. He's had some dominant work at the big league level. He's thrown 191 innings at the big leagues, the 105 whip. Last time he threw 50 innings in the majors was 2020. 50. He has never thrown 60 innings at the big league level, and he started his career in 2019. So we'll root for him, but right now, not much fantasy stuff going on. German Marquez and Kyle Freeland of the Rockies. You hear Rockies, you see Rockies, you don't draft Rockies. Totally get it. Not saying it's wrong. German Marquez coming back from the elbow injury. This was interesting. According to the Gun, during a bullpen session recently, he was hitting 97, 98 miles an hour. Maybe his arm is all the way back. Okay, now, before we all get excited about that, he didn't throw 30 innings the last 2 years coming back from Tommy John surgery. He still pitches at Coors. But Marquez, we're not drafting Marquez, but we can put him on a watch list. Maybe it's way low on the watch list, but put him on the watch list. Let's not forget that in 2021, he had 176 strikeouts and 180 innings. 2022, he had 150 strikeouts and 181 innings. 2019, 175 and 174 innings. 2018, 230 strikeouts and 196 innings. He routinely would throw 180 innings, get you about 170 strikeouts. Not bad. He won 11 games, 14 games, 12 games, 12 games. Like, he pitched enough that he got victories. His ratios were never good, but here are his whips: 1.2, 1.2, 1.26, 1.27. I mean, better than league average. His career mark's better than league average, 1.29. Excuse me for a second. So just file that away. Excuse me. He's somebody that at times has been effective. If you're, the right matchup and all. Coors is not what it used to be either, right? It's just not. The humidor and everything, it doesn't play as crazy as it used to play. I'm not saying you want to start guys in Coors. I'm just saying. Not the craziest thing in the world to think, German Marquez, when he's on the road, if he's healthy, maybe I'll stream this guy. Another guy to potentially stream is his teammate, Kyle Freeland. Kyle Freeland pitched the other day for the Rockies in spring. 2 hits over 2 innings, didn't give up any runs. 17 of his 24 pitches were strikes. Like, Kyle Freeland's a pretty good pitcher. He just is. He's a pretty good pitcher. Now, pitches for the Rockies, and you don't want to pitch him at home. He's not a big strikeout guy, which is concerning because you feel like if you're going to open yourself up to the potentiality of the runs, that at least you need the strikeouts. Well, that's not what you're going to get with Kyle Freeland. But Kyle Freeland, again, he's 31 years old. He's been pretty effective at times. Let's look at his numbers. He's not a strikeout guy at all. So remember that when we're talking about him here, just not the way it wants to play. I'm trying to pull up the website's working slow. I'm trying to pull up his splits on the road. Come on, website, because I know his road numbers are pretty solid for Kyle Freeland. Now the website's not working. We're not going to have it. Kyle Freeland is somebody to consider starting on the road in the right matchup. He frequently goes 5-6 innings. He keeps his team in the game. No strikeouts, not sexy, not pitching at Colorado. But not every Colorado Rockies pitcher is absolutely useless at all periods of time. Next up for the pitching side of things is Hayden Birdsong of the Giants, and this one is interesting. We talked earlier about Birdsong, I think it was early last week, if I'm not mistaken, about Kyle Harrison and then we talked a couple weeks ago about Kyle Harrison. Kyle Harrison is the guy that the Giants want to be their fifth starter. That's what they want. Can he do it, though? Last year was disappointing. He lost some velocity. He claims he found a mechanical issue that he's tweaked, that the velocity has returned. Okay, so Harrison seems to be back on that right path, but he's got a lot to prove after what was not even a league average season last year for him. It was really disappointing. And Birdsong, much less heralded prospect, had some moments last year, had some disappointing efforts last year too, but he did enough that the Giants are interested, and you come into camp this year and he's throwing 98 miles an hour, and it's like, we're going to take a look here. So Kyle Harrison's got to go. I'm still anticipating at this point in time that Kyle Harrison opens up in the rotation over Hayden Birdsong. Whether or not that's the case will depend greatly on how the next month goes. Birdsong could end up being the Giants, Jacob Junis this year. He could be a guy that makes 12 starts, but those 78 innings because he worked out of the bullpen 41 times, So it's an intriguing arm. He's 23 years old. Again, I don't anticipate he breaks the camp in the rotation. If he doesn't break camp in the rotation, it's possible he's in the minors. I assume. Let me see if the website's working. I assume he still has multiple options left. Let's pull up Birdsong. He's got to have options left. How many options does he have? Where are you, Birdsong? Oh, it would help if I could find Birdsong. Birdsong has got 3 options left. Yeah, so he's got plenty of options left. But, something to think about. When you throw 98 miles an hour, people take notice. We know how that goes. Sandy Alcantara, speaking of throwing 98 miles an hour, Sandy Alcantara threw an inning on Sunday against the Mets, and it was scoreless. It was really good news for Alcantara. Obviously, a Cy Young caliber performer prior to injury. The team was very cautious with his return from the Tommy John surgery. He's ready to go. He was named the starter for the team. Alcantara, as we've talked about on the show, has already said to the public, when he was interviewed, that the team's going to be kind of cautious the first couple of starts he makes, but after the first handful of starts, he wants to just go. He doesn't want to be on a pitch count once he proves he can handle the innings and all that. One of the better innings eaters in baseball was Alcantara. Now he's got a solid place to pitch in his home park. Not a great lineup around him, not a great environment around him, but he's battled through that to be a top-end fantasy performer regardless, right? So that's the hope. He actually was hitting 98, 99 on the gun. I misspoke when I said 98. He almost even hit 99 on the gun over the weekend. Great to see. There's always the question, as we discuss all the time, even if the pitcher is performing well, coming back from surgery, what does that look like? Are we just going to let a guy who had arm surgery just all of a sudden return and throw 192 innings? Probably not. If we're 18 games under 500, are we going to do that? No. They've got Yuri Perez coming back from injury as well as his own arm surgery. He's likely to miss the first half of the season. If we're being totally honest about the Marlins, let's be totally honest about the Marlins. If we're being totally honest about the Marlins, they're playing for 2026 in a best case scenario. They might be playing for 2027 or 28, but they ain't playing for 2025. So they're going to want to have 2026 start with Yuri Perez and Sandy Alcantara as the 1-2s in their rotation, fully ready to go and to throw their 170 innings. So that's the goal. Whether it happens or not, right? But that's the goal. So be cautious here. Even if Alcantara starts really well and he's pitching well, it might not be the worst idea in the world to think about trading him early in the year, because is he going to throw 175 innings? Like, it's really tough to think they're going to let him do that this year. That's, I think, more of the plan in 2026. But great start here, throwing 99. Love seeing that with Sandy Alcantara. Nick Martinez, I don't think he's ever thrown 99 miles an hour. He is somebody that accepted the $21 million qualifying offer for the Reds, which is kind of surprising. It's kind of surprising they offered it. A little surprising he accepted it. But I guess he got the thought that, if I went on the open market because of that draft pick compensation, I'm going to get a 3-year deal for $40 million. I might as well just go $20 million here and see if I can get more. I don't know. But anyway, Martinez, who was written about last year, I don't think he was in the breakout pitcher of the year article last year, but he was written about as one of those guys that popped more frequently than not on the hill, which is interesting because every time he popped on the hill in all the analysis we did in the preseason last year at FG, none of it was like, wow. It was always like, here's the limit. You got to be better than this to be included. And here's Nick Martinez right above that line. And he went out and had a really good season last year. He is not a dominant performer. He will not be a dominant performer. The odds are great that his ratios will get worse than they were last season. It's still a bad place to pitch in Cincinnati. He is an effective hurler. If he was in a better ballpark, I think there'd be more intrigue here. I think that we're looking at, he's not the Reds' Kyle Freeland, but kind of. Don't be overly swayed by the salary of the $21 million this year with Nick Martinez or the ratios from last season. That is not who he is. He will hope to throw 150, 60 innings, get you 135 strikeouts, have his ERA be 3.9, his WHIP be 1.25. Like, he'll try to fit in that zone of pitching. Could be very usable throughout the year, especially if he's in a nice groove or he's not pitching at home. Like, it could be very usable in the mixed league. But don't expect a repeat on a larger scale of what he did last season. Jeffrey Springs threw 2 scoreless innings against the Rockies for his debut on Sunday. This is really intriguing. Jeffrey Springs is a very intriguing guy. Jeffrey Springs is somebody who was ascending with Tampa Bay, really ascending. And he signed a significant contract with the Rays, and then he blew his arm out. So everything was coming together for him, and then it all just stopped one day. And he missed time, hasn't pitched in a while. He gets traded to the A's, which is not great. Though I will be honest, it's not great, but going from where Tampa Bay is not going to play, because for those of you that don't remember, Tampa Bay is not playing, still in Florida, but they're not playing at the Trop because they got hurt in the hurricane. So they're playing at Steinbrenner Field, which is outside. The weather's super hot there. It's going to be a much better environment to hit than the Tropicana was, or the Trop. So Springs going to the A's is not the worst thing in the world because he loses that home field advantage. Now, he would have had a decent home field advantage in Oakland too. It's a little worse moving to Sacramento. So it's so funny. This guy, Jeffrey Springs, if he stayed with the Rays, would have been playing at a minor league stadium. Got traded to the A's, still playing at a minor league stadium. So he was going to play at a minor league stadium regardless. His last season of 40 innings at the big league level was 2022. He had Tommy John surgery. He came back last season, late in the year, made 7 starts, was effective. The velocity was diminished, though, and they shut him down early because they just didn't want to push things. So there was a little bit of concern that they shut him down because he was hurt. Were they just saying, hey, man, we're playing the long-term game? Well, the A's made a trade for him. So you have to think if they made a trade for him that they're not worried about the medicals. So that was really good news. Then we see him go out yesterday in that performance yesterday, and his fastball was at 91 to 92 miles an hour. Last season when he returned, his fastball was at 90, right? 89, 90, which is, again, one of the reasons why they shut him down late in the year. They're like, let's not push this. So to see him on his first appearance this spring to have the velocity back, to be instead of 89, 90, to be at 91, 92, that's really nice. He was effective yesterday. He's going to get a chance to pitch. There's a lot of stories coming out of A's camp that suggests that Jeffrey Springs is going to have no limitations, meaning that the A's are going to let him throw his 170 innings this year if he can do it. Remember, these guys thrown 50 innings at the big league level one single time, once. It was back in 2022. But I really like Jeffrey Springs' skill set. I think that at this point in time, his ADP is reasonable. He's being drafted, but it's not. His ADP is 273. And it's starting to bump up, and it'll probably start to head up a little bit too. I think it was more toward 300 when we were starting this about a month ago here, really kind of diving into baseball a month and a half ago. So it's starting to creep up. It'll probably creep up a little bit more, but I think even at that price point, Jeffrey Springs is well worth investing in for 2025. Erick Fedde, who the hell's Erick Fedde come into the last season? Well, he's a nobody at the big league level. He went to the KBO, found his game in the KBO, dominated in the KBO, returned last season, was pretty effective early in the year for the White Sox, got traded to the Cardinals, and it kind of petered out at the end. And that is unsurprising that happened last year. He's 32. Tomorrow? He's 32 tomorrow. I'm looking at him right now. He's 32. Happy birthday, Erick Fedde. He's 32 tomorrow. And, in the end, he did slow down, but he had a 3.3 ERA. He threw 177 innings. He had a 1.16 whip. That's really good. And in this modern day of baseball, if you can have those ratios and throw 170 innings, I mean, right? And remember, the year before that, when he was in the KBO, he threw 180 innings. So this 2 years in a row at 175 innings. That's really nice. The Cardinals, as we talked about earlier, are looking to build. They are kind of ramping upward. They're turning things over to some of their youngsters. They're kind of in that they're in a rebuild, but not a teardown. Like, they don't want to win 61 games this year. They want to be a 500 ball club while they're doing it, right? That's the Cardinals' way. So Fedde, who will be 32 tomorrow, his contract pays him about $7.5 million this year, so he's very reasonable. So the Cardinals would love to have him pitch all season long. They would also be interested in trading him. That's the report, because it's unlikely they're going to look at Erick Fedde, even if he has another year like he did last season, this year, which I think is pushing it. Let's say it's a little worse, right? He throws 170 innings, but he's got a 3.9 ERA, and his whip is 1.3. He's kind of league average. They're not going to pay, $12, $13, $14 million a year to that. Okay, they're not doing that. So they like to trade him, especially trading him now, because he's only going to cost you $7.5 million. And a starting pitcher who costs $7.5 million who can throw 175 solid innings, it's worth more than that. So that's what is in consideration here, that the Cardinals might move on from Fedde. We'll see. Wouldn't be surprising at all. And then if he's traded, it wouldn't be surprising at all to see him on another team next year, because that's kind of where he's at. He's at that point in his career. A very solid season last year. No one's really talking about him. I mentioned Manaea a couple of times. He's been diagnosed with a right oblique strain. Manaea, the lefty of the Mets, who was fantastic last season, especially down the stretch, was quality start after quality start, who signed a contract to return to the Mets, hurt his oblique. He's going to start the season on the injured list. So, I mean, we're a month away from that. So it's probably a grade 2, maybe a grade 3. We'll see. It's a couple of weeks of shutdown, then we reevaluate, then we start ramping things up. We know how the oblique goes. The oblique, for those that don't know, I'm trying to show everyone. The oblique is the muscle right here. It's kind of below your armpit, like the muscle that if you have one, it sticks out. Swimmers and such. So all the twisting and all the torque motion, whether it's swinging or throwing, everything engages the oblique. So that's the new injury, right? It used to be the elbow injury and Tommy John surgery. Now it's the oblique that's become the thing. I guess the ACL is a thing too. But bottom line is, we don't know exactly what the strain is for Manaea, what their expectation is exactly, because I don't think they know at this moment in time. They've already announced he's not going to be ready for opening day, which again is a month away. That's not surprising. Oblique strains go anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks generally. More often than not, it's 4 to 6 weeks. It can be longer than that. It can, you can have a setback and then you have to kind of start over from scratch, because it's basically you just have to do nothing, which is tough. So this is bad news for him. As I noted earlier in the show today, I've already lowered him in the rankings at fantasyguru.com because of the uncertainty. He took a pretty precipitous fall. Now he could be back on April 10th. He missed 2 starts and everything's great. And then, okay, as we get closer and get more information, we'll make those adjustments. But that's where we're at right now. So the Clay Holmes signing this offseason by the Mets is huge at the moment, because it's Kodai Senga, who had all the health injuries last year, David Peterson, who should be fine, and right now is probably their only lefty in the rotation. Paul Blackburn, who can't stay healthy. Griffin Canning, who is league average. And Clay Holmes. If Clay Holmes can't throw his 160 innings and be effective, like all of a sudden, yeesh. And, this is tough news. They've already lost Frankie Montas, did the Mets, to a lat. The oblique now takes Manaea out. Christian Scott, their youngster, their top-end pitching prospect, he hurt his elbow last year and had Tommy John surgery. So those are the 3 guys, Manaea, Montas, and Scott, that in an ideal world would be in their starting rotation. Season hasn't even started yet, and they've already got 3 guys down. They knew, let's say 2 guys down, because Scott was never going to be there. So 2 guys down, and now we're looking at Paul Blackburn and Griffin Canning. So Canning's important too for the Mets, not for the fantasy space. For the Mets, he's really important. He's got to eat some innings up. So that's kind of a review of what we got there. Let's see. We've got a comment here from Chaka the Furball. Let's see what Chaka's got to say. He's got a question. Again, you can leave the question if you're watching us live on YouTube, Twitter X, or Facebook. Chaka's question is, Ray, I'm keeping Ohtani as a DH starting pitcher for 46. Okay, totally fine. And Judge for 42. It's a lot. That leaves me $62 for 5 starting spots on my bench. Am I hurting myself by keeping Judge 2, or just fill the team with low-dollar guys? Okay. Traditional setup, just to say it in case people are new to auctions. And again, remember, Saturday and Sunday, I'll be covering the auctions, the AL and NL only leagues for labor on SiriusXM at 3 o'clock Eastern time, 3 to 5 Eastern, Saturday, Sunday. Traditionally, you don't spend any money on your bench. Traditionally, you spend all of your auction values for your starting lineup. So this situation that Chaka is describing is not normal. Okay, so normally it's just the auction values go for your starting lineup, and then your bench options go with a snake draft. Okay, so that's the way it's traditionally done. Obviously, Chaka's League doesn't do it that way. I'm still going to anticipate that on the bench, we're going to go $1 players. Why not, right? I don't know your setup, Chaka. I don't know what your scoring system is. I don't know how many teams are in your league. I don't know how many players are being kept or what their costs. Like, I have no idea, so I can't answer this question. But I'm going to answer it because you asked. But I can't really answer it. I would say this: in an ideal world, because Ohtani can pitch and hit, I'm not at all nervous about the $46 overall. I mean, it's really high. And I don't know if I for sure want to spend it, But if you can change your lineup on a daily basis, I'm okay with that price point, especially because in essence, he is 2 players. So you could say to yourself, Ray, I'm paying $30 for Ohtani the hitter and $16 for Ohtani the pitcher. Or I'm spending $40 for Ohtani the hitter and $6 for Ohtani the pitcher. Like, you can totally make sense. Judge at $42 is a little high, a little bit. In a keeper league like this, that's not crazy inflation at all. There will be leagues where he probably goes for 45, 46, maybe 50 in an East Coast league if it's a keeper league, right? So that's a fair price too. Ideally, you would not have 2 $40 players. But in essence, I'm going to consider this at least 2.5, if not 3 players, because Ohtani is a pitcher and a hitter for you. That makes it much more palatable. So if I say to myself, I got a $40 hitter, I got a $40 hitter, and I got an $8 pitcher in Ohtani. Totally fine by me, right? So I think you can do this. $62 for 5 starting spots in an ideal world. That's $12 a player. That's fantastic. You have bench spots. It's different. It takes the value down here. But I think that turning back either one of these 2 guys, the real question becomes, who are you going to be able to replace them with? Can you get Yordan Alvarez for 37? Is that something you can do, or is Yordan Alvarez already been kept? Or Yordan Alvarez is going to cost 46? So you have to judge it that way. So it's really difficult when people ask these keeper questions because I just have no context for the broadness of what's going on in the league. But as I noted here, because Ohtani is 2 guys, I'm going to consider this $98 on 3 guys, which is expensive but doable in this scenario. What it does mean is that you're probably going to have to be very judicious with how you spend your money, and anyone that is a $15 player, you're not going to get, most likely, because the $15 players become $19 players in a keeper league, and you do that. Now let's say we're down to $43 for 9 spots. It starts getting tight. Not that you couldn't do it. Not that you couldn't. Of course you could do it, but you're gonna have to be cautious here. So this is basically turning out to most likely be a stars and scrubs type of approach. Stars and scrubs is generally the elite level players and then the cheaper level players. The other main approach in auctions is the balanced approach, where we don't have all the top end guys, but we stay away from the bottom end guys and we build in the middle, right? So this is more of a top end approach with 2 guys over $40. I'm not overly comfortable. I wouldn't recommend anyone spends $40 for 2 players if they have a $260 budget. I wouldn't recommend anyone spending $40 for 2 individual players, except this is different because Ohtani's actually 2 players himself. So it's okay in this scenario. I'm not sure perfectly what you want to do anyway, but it's okay in this scenario. But yeah, be very cautious. Even if you're stars and scrubs, going multiple $40 players out of that $260 budget does get tight. There's a whole strategy and theory and everything about auctions, and there's podcasts over at fantasyguru.com talking about this. If you want to dig into that, you can find that. Go to MLB at the top. Draft Guide MLB podcast pops up. You can find previous podcasts talking about how to handle stars and scrubs, how to handle the balanced approach, all of that. But I think in this scenario, Chaka, you can do it. You can do it. Let's hope you can put the team together well around them. But if you're going to spend it on 2 guys, those are 2 of the 5 or 6 guys you're going to spend it on anyway, right? So pretty good value there. Let me throw it back up on the screen for those of you that missed it to start the show today. There's the schedule for the rest of this week. Remember, this show will not be on tomorrow. We will return on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday here. The Elite Sports Show from 3 to 6 Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio is on today and tomorrow, hosted by Justin Fensterman. I will be hosting the show on Wednesday. That show will be off the air on Thursday. I'll be back to hosting that show on Friday. So Monday through Friday, here's the schedule. This show, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Elite Sports 3 to 6 Eastern on SiriusXM. That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. There are the articles that are available that are going to go up this week over at fantasyguru.com. We're talking average draft position this week. We'll have my write-ups on the 2 drafts that I'm in this week. Tomorrow, I'm doing the Tomorrow, I'm doing the Tout Wars draft in the morning. Then in the evening, I'm doing the FSGA draft. Both of those are mixed leagues. The morning draft for Tout Wars, that's the one that uses souls instead of saves, innings pitched instead of victories, on-base percentage instead of batting average. So it's that experimental league. The evening, as you can see on that screen there, from 8 to 11 Eastern, I'll be in the draft and hosting the draft of the Labor 15 team mixed league draft out of the number 8 spot. Tout Wars, I have the first pick. Labor, I have the 8th pick. We'll see how both those drafts go tomorrow. So thanks for joining me today. We'll be back again on Wednesday. Sorry, no show tomorrow, but we'll be back on Wednesday, rocking and rolling and ready to go to return to that fun that we have on the show. Hopefully you enjoyed yourselves today. Tell a friend, spread the word, go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, get signed up for the product, type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your local podcast network. Check us out there. You can also find us at fantasyguru.com, YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter X. Check us out, Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. I'm Ray Flowers. I'll see you on Wednesday. Have a great day. Have a good one tomorrow. And see you on Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern for Fantasy Sports Daily.